Right now, as you watch this, your device is having a conversation. It's talking to a server, maybe in Virginia, maybe in Frankfurt, maybe in a data center you'll never visit, in a city you've never heard of, humming quietly behind the locked door. And the language it's using to have that conversation, some of it was designed when people were still using typewriters. Not metaphorically, not inspired by old ideas. I mean literally, the core rules that govern how your data travels across the internet were written by a small group of engineers in the 1970s, when the entire internet was maybe a dozen computers, when going online meant dialing a university mainframe over a phone line. And here's what's wild. We never really replaced those rules. We patched them. We extended them. We built a layer after layer on top of them, like construction workers adding new floors to a building while pretending not to notice that the foundation is cracking. Today we're going to pull back the curtain on that foundation. We're going to talk about TCP, about HTTP, about IPv4 and IPv6, not as dry technical concepts, but as a story. A story about brilliant engineering, about human stubbornness, about trillion-dollar industries built on top of technology that was never meant to carry them, and about what happens when the past refuses to let go of the future. Let's start at the very beginning. It's 1974. The Cold War is at its height. The US Department of Defense is quietly funding a project called ARPANET, the earliest ancestor of what we now call the Internet. Their goal is simple and also slightly terrifying. Build a communication network that can survive a nuclear strike. The idea is that if one node gets destroyed, if one city goes dark, the messages reroute, the network heals itself. Information finds another path. To make that work, two engineers, Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn, sit down and design a protocol, a set of rules for how computers should talk to each other. They call it TCP/IP. TCP, Transmission Control Protocol. Here's how it works at its core, and I want you to really picture this. Imagine you want to send a letter to someone across the country, but instead of sending it as one envelope, you tear it into 100 pieces. You number each piece. You send each piece through a different route. Some go by plane, some by truck, some by a roundabout path through 3 other cities. And when all the pieces arrive at the destination, the recipient reassembles them in the right order. That's TCP. Your data gets broken into packets. Each packet travels independently across the internet. And TCP makes sure that every single packet arrives, and arrives in order. If a packet gets lost, TCP notices. It asks for it again. It waits. It keeps asking until every piece is accounted for. This is called reliability. And in 1974, it was genuinely revolutionary. Here's the problem. TCP was designed for a network of dozens of computers, scientists sending research papers to each other, messages a few kilobytes long, traveling between universities on the East Coast. Nobody, and I mean nobody, imagined that 50 years later, this same protocol would be carrying 4K Netflix streams or real-time video calls with your grandmother in another country, or multiplayer video games where milliseconds mean the difference between winning and losing, or billions of simultaneous connections from people's pockets, riding on radio waves, from moving vehicles in crowded cities. TCP was not built for any of that. Now, to be fair, TCP has been tweaked constantly over the decades. Engineers have added congestion control algorithms, fast retransmit mechanisms, selective acknowledgements. The TCP you use today is not identical to TCP of 1974, but the fundamental design, the handshake, the sequential delivery, the reliability above all else philosophy, that hasn't changed. And that matters because that philosophy comes with costs. Before TCP can send you a single byte of data, it has to do what's called the handshake. Your device sends a signal. Hey, I want to connect. The server sends back, okay, I got that, I'm ready. The device sends back, great, I acknowledge you're ready. 3 messages, back and forth, before anything else happens. On a fast, stable, wired connection, those 3 messages take milliseconds. You'd never notice. But on a mobile network, on a satellite connection, connecting to a server on the other side of the planet, those milliseconds stack up. That handshake becomes a noticeable delay. And then every time a packet gets lost, which happens all the time on mobile networks, TCP stops everything. It waits all the other packets, even the ones that already arrived safely, sit in a queue doing nothing, waiting for the last one to be resent. This is called head-of-line blocking, and it's one of the TCP's deepest, most structural flaws. It's not a bug, it's a design choice, one that made perfect sense in 1974 and causes real measurable pain today. Think of it like this. Imagine a highway with a single lane. You're in a convoy of 100 cars. Car number 47 breaks down. What happens? Everything stops. Car 48 through 100, perfectly functional, right where they need to be. Just sit there, waiting, even though they could go around. Even though the destination is right there. The rules say everyone waits. That's TCP when the packet drops. And here's the uncomfortable truth. We can't just replace TCP. Not easily, not quickly, maybe not ever. At least not entirely. Because TCP isn't just a piece of software you update on one computer. It's baked into every router. It's baked into every router, every server, every operating system, every network card, every firmware stack on the planet. It's infrastructure, like plumbing, like electrical wiring. We can't just rip it out. So instead, we built on top of it. More on that in a moment. But first, let me tell you the story of HTTP, the protocol that actually delivers the web, and how it went from something embarrassingly primitive to something genuinely impressive over the course of 3 generations. It's 1991. Tim Berners-Lee, a British physicist working at CERN in Switzerland, publishes a short document describing something he calls the World Wide Web. The idea, documents stored on computers, linked to each other, accessible to anyone. And to transfer those documents, he designs a simple protocol. It has exactly one job. You ask for documents, you get the document. He calls it HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. The first version, which we retroactively call HTTP/0.9, is almost insultingly simple. You connect to a server, you type something like get/index.html. The server sends you the file. The connection closes. That's it. No headers, no status codes, no metadata, just ask, receive, done. By 1996, HTTP 1.0 adds a bit more sophistication. Headers, status codes, like the famous 404. Support for different types of files, still simple but functional. Then comes HTTP 1.1 in 1997, and this is the version that will dominate the internet for the next 17 years. 17 years. Think about that. HTTP 1.1 is finalized in 1997 and doesn't get a meaningful successor until 2015. The web goes from static pages with hit counters to YouTube, Facebook, Gmail, online banking, streaming music, e-commerce, all of it running on a protocol designed for a much simpler world. Here's the problem with HTTP 1.1 that nobody talks about enough. Every time a browser wants to load the web page, it has to ask for each resource separately. The HTML, one request. The CSS style sheet, another request. The logo, another. The font, another. The JavaScript file, another. The analytics script, another. The ad, another. The social media button, another. A modern web page, even a simple one, might require 50, 80, sometimes over 100 separate requests to fully load. And with HTTP 1.1, those requests are mostly sequential. Rather, your browser opens multiple TCP connections to work around this. Typically 6 connections per domain. which means instead of one traffic jam, you have 6 parallel ones. Better, you're still deeply awkward. A workaround. Engineers at big tech companies start developing increasingly baroque tricks to deal with this. Domain sharding, splitting your assets across multiple fake subdomains, so the browser thinks it's talking to different servers and opens more parallel connections. Inlining CSS and JavaScript directly into HTML to save a round trip. Spreadsheets, cramming dozens of icons into a single image file, and using CSS to crop out only the part you need. Not because these are good ideas, because HTTP 1.1 forces them to be necessary. By the early 2010s, the situation is getting ridiculous. The web has outgrown its own infrastructure. Engineers at Google start working on an experimental protocol they call SPDY, pronounced Speedy. SPDY is a direct attack on HTTP 1.1's core problem, sequential requests over a single connection. The key insight of SPDY and later HTTP 2 is something called multiplexing. Remember our highway metaphor. HTTP 1.1 is like a highway where every car has to wait for the car in front of it. HTTP 2 is like adding dozens of virtual lanes within a single physical road. Multiple requests to fly through the same connection simultaneously, interleaved, independent, not blocking each other. No more opening 6 separate TCP connections, no more domain sharding, no more spreadsheets to reduce request counts. One connection carrying everything in parallel. HTTP 2 also includes header compression. This one sounds boring, but it matters. Every HTTP request and response carries headers, metadata about the message. With HTTP 1.1, those headers are sent as plain text with every single request. If you're loading 80 resources on a page, you're spelling the same headers 80 times. With HTTP 2, headers are compressed and cached. Repeated information is sent once and referenced. And HTTP 2 has something even more interesting, server push. Instead of waiting for the browser to ask for each resource, the server can proactively send things it knows the browser will need. You requested the HTML. Here, I also send the CSS and the main JavaScript file before you even ask for them. HTTP 2 is standardized in 2015 and adoption is by internet standards fairly rapid. By 2020, over half of all websites support it. Major browsers require HTTPS to use it, which has a nice side effect of pushing the web toward encryption. So problem solved, right? Not quite. Remember TCP. Remember head of line blocking? HTTP cleverly solves HTTP level head of line blocking. Multiple streams, no waiting. But here's the thing. All those streams still travel over TCP, and TCP doesn't know about HTTP. Two multiple streams. To TCP is all just one big connection. So when the packet drops on a TCP connection, carrying an HTTP 2 session, which is carrying, say, 20 multiplexed streams, what happens? All 20 streams stop. They all wait for one missing packet. HTTP 2 fixed the problem one layer up, and they left the deeper problem completely untouched. This isn't a minor edge case. One loss in networks, mobile connections, congested Wi-Fi packet loss can happen frequently. And the more streams you're multiplexing through that one TCP connection, the worse the effect of each drop. In some measured experiments, HTTP 2 performs worse than HTTP 1.1 on bad networks because of this. You expected improvement and got regression, which brings us to the third generation. Around 2012, engineers at Google are starting at this problem. They know they can't fix it. TCP is too baked in, too universal, too fundamental, so they do something audacious. They decide to build a new transport protocol from scratch, not inside the operating system kernel where TCP lives, because that would take decades to deploy. Instead, they built it in user space on top of UDP. UDP, User Datagram Protocol, is TCP's simpler, rougher cousin, where TCP is reliable, ordered, and careful. UDP is a cowboy. You send packets. They might arrive, they might not. We get no confirmation. UDP doesn't shake hands. It doesn't acknowledge. It just fires and forgets. That sounds terrible, but it has one crucial advantage. There's no built-in head of line blocking. There's no three-way handshake. There's almost no overhead. Google's new protocol, called QUIC, takes UDP as its foundation and then builds reliability, ordering, and stream multiplexing on top of it. The key difference, QUIC's streams are independent at the transport layer. If a packet is lost in one stream, the other streams keep flowing, no traffic jam. QUIC also bakes in encryption from day one. There's no HTTP versus HTTPS with QUIC. It's always encrypted, always authenticated. And it does its security handshake simultaneously with its connection handshake, cutting the setup time in half compared to TCP plus TLS. And one more trick, QUIC supports what is called connection migration. With TCP, if you're on Wi-Fi and you step outside and switch to mobile data, your IP address changes and your TCP connection dies. You have to start over. With QUIC, the connection is identified not by your IP address, but by a random connection ID, switch networks. The connection continues seamlessly. A person walking out of a cafe, switching from Wi-Fi to mobile, connection is still active. HTTP 3, simply HTTP running on top of QUIC. Instead of TCP, it was standardized in 2022. As of today, about a third of all websites supported. And major CDNs like Cloudflare and Fastly have been pushing it hard. So we went from HTTP 1.1 and sequential plaintext request response workhorse from 1997 through HTTP 2's elegant multiplexing to HTTP 3's radical reinvention of the transport layer. Progress, right? Real, genuine progress. But, and there's always a but, we didn't get rid of the HTTP 1.1. It's still out there. Billions of devices still use it. Millions of servers still default to it. But, and there's always a but, we didn't get rid of HTTP 1.1. It's still out there. Billions of devices still use it. Millions of servers still default to it. All the better systems, old firmware, old appliances, they speak HTTP 1.1 and only HTTP 1.1.